Hey guys, Paul here with Patek. In this video, I'm going to share with you the lenses that I use on my Sony A7 III and my Sony A6000, which I'm recording on right now. I'm going to let you in on why I think they're affordable and why they would be a great choice for you, depending on what your needs are. So let's jump in. Okay, so I'm going to start with my Sigma 16mm, which is sitting on my Sony A6000. That's what I'm recording with right now. So I figured I'd start with that lens and I won't forget it. So there's two lenses that I generally have on my Sony A6000 for recording these kind of videos. Either my Viltrox 23 f1.4 or my Sony 16mm f1.4. So when I want to show a little bit more of the room, I'll go to the 16mm Sony. And I mean, there's so much been said about this lens. If you're an APS-C shooter and you're looking for one lens that does it all, this is the lens to buy. The current price on the 16mm is $399 from B&H. So it's definitely an affordable lens. And so let me classify affordable. I would say anything that's over $1,000 for the working man is probably something that you have to think about. But this lens has a buttery smooth focus ring. It shoots video exceptionally well. You can do all kinds of different things with it. It's pretty much lived on my A6000 until the Viltrox 23 f1.4 came along. And so I'll switch out to the Viltrox when I want a little bit more of a close-up perspective. But I have absolutely nothing negative to say about the Sigma 16. Just go out and get one. You'll be glad you did, especially if you're shooting video. Okay, so let's start the lineup here with the kit lens that came with the my A6000, which is the 16 to 50mm OSS 3.5 to 5.6. I'll be honest with you, the only time I use this lens right now is probably when I go on vacation, if I want to travel super light. And I don't want to take a camera, which is pretty rare. I'll take the A6000 and this lens, and just because it's super compact, and it is what it is, right? Being 3.5 to 5.6, you're not going to get that blurry background that everybody likes, but for vacation pictures, it gives you a good enough range to take a few snapshots and come home with some decent pictures. The next lens that I own is the FE 50mm 1.8, and a lot of people gripe about this lens. I would say the deciding factor for me is that 50mm is not a crucial focal length for me. Like, mostly if I'm not shooting video, I'm doing headshots. And so I mean, the 50 is a great headshot lens. It's a great perspective. I mean, a lot of world-renowned photographers love this particular focal length. I'm just not one of those people. To be honest with you, I got 6 or 8 lenses here on the table that I'm going to talk about, and this is probably the lens that I use the least. Okay. It is not the sharpest lens in Sony's lineup by any means, and I think that's why a lot of people gripe about it. The autofocus is a little bit slower than on some of their other lenses, but if you just want to get something that's inexpensive to try out the 50mm focal length, you're looking at $198 at B&H right now. So it's definitely one of Sony's most affordable lenses, and probably the images you're going to get, people are not going to complain about them, but professional photographers might look at them and go, they'll point out, they'll pixel peep and say, this is not sharp, that's not sharp, here's a little purple fringing. But honestly, for just your everyday photos or doing street photography, it's a pretty decent lens at an amazing price. So there you have it. That's about all I can say about the 50. Now, the next lens that I use on a regular basis is the Viltrox AF23 1.4. And like I said, when I had the 16mm Sigma, that was on my A6000. That's just lived there. And this video is the first one in a while where I've actually switched back to the Sigma 16 because I wanted to show a little bit more of the room. And when I don't want that, then I reach for the 23 f1.4. This is a really great lens. The price on it right now is $299 B&H as well. Okay, so it's definitely an affordable lens, And I have another Viltrox lens I'll talk about in a second. And I would say you're going to notice a little bit of purple fringing with this lens. Autofocus is pretty good. Mostly I use this for video on the A6000. And so, in fact, I'd say primarily, I mean, I don't shoot headshots with this ever. It's strictly for video, and for the price, it's a really good choice. You're very hard to beat. Okay, the only lens that I own that I would say does not fall into the category of being the working man's affordable budget lens, and that is my GMaster 1.4 24mm lens. Okay, I thought long and hard about buying this lens here, and the thing that sold me on the lens is it is super lightweight. It does everything superbly well. If you're going to shoot, people with it or a headshot or something like that, you just have to be careful. Like if you stick your arm out, you're going to get that wide angle perspective distortion. Okay, but it is an absolutely amazing lens. It's super sharp, fantastic tracking. I mean, there's no negatives on this lens. It has the aperture ring that locks in, or you can set it manually. But the thing that sold me on this lens are these programmable buttons on the side, because I use this lens on my Sony A7 III primarily. And so it's a 24mm focal length, but when you hit the button, it's 35mm. And so, if I'm shooting video or I'm doing a wide shot and I just want to punch in a little bit, I mean, I use this punch in feature. I think Sony should be advertising it. You never hear them talk about it in the promos for this lenses, but you have that ability. Now, mind you, it's cropped into 35, but it's still a tremendous, for me, it's one of the main reasons I bought the lens. It's got, an amazing focus ring on it. There's really nothing to complain about with this lens, and with a 1.4 aperture, it's great for video. On my Sony A7 III, I can crank the ISO, shooting video up to 800, 1000, no issues with this lens. So, and it's super light. Okay, the one thing I can tell you about photography and the lenses that you buy and the ones that you're going to use over the years are the ones that are not a pain in the ass to use. Okay, and we'll talk about this Tamron, big Tamron, later. But so what I mean is, if you have a lens that's super heavy, you're not going to pick it up and take it with you. I used to use on my Nikon cameras a 70 to 200mm Sigma lens, and it was great if it was mounted on a tripod, but take it to a wedding and walk around all day with it, or even to an engagement shoot, is just like, oh my god. And so what you find is that lens tends to sit in your bag, or it sits in one of the storage cabinets here behind, and it doesn't get used. Okay, so that was another reason behind the 24. I mean, this thing on the A7 III, it just fits the camera so well. It's super lightweight, it's super sharp, shoots video, does everything really well. Okay, so, but it's the one lens that's not a working man's lens. The price on it right now is $12.98 at B&H. Okay, but it's honestly, it's worth every penny. I think you talk to any photographer that owns this lens, they would have no negatives to say about it. The next lens that I have, and I use on my A7 III, is a Tamron lens. It's 28 to 75, and it's a 2.8 aperture. And again, this lens, it's super lightweight. You can shoot portraits, so it's kind of like your bread and butter lens, like the 24 to 70, but it's very affordable. So 28 to 75 Tamron is $879, so it's under $1,000. It's affordable. It does, family shots. It does my engagement shoots. Anything that you can possibly think of, that you're going to love this lens. A 2.8 aperture is wide enough to let lots of light in. You're going to get that blurry background if you want. It just depends on the setting. I can't say enough about this lens. On my A7 III, I would say this is the lens that's been on that camera the most, aside from the 24 now. But this is a great choice, a great affordable choice as a bread and butter lens. It gives you that sort of mid-range, wide to headshot range, and it's been a real killer lens for me, for sure. The next lens that I use primarily for headshots is the Viltrox 85mm f1.8. And I think I was probably one of the first to adopt this lens. This is the first version. They've just come out with a V2, and if you're going to buy this lens, make sure you get the V2 because a couple of things have been fixed on this lens. So the purple fringing and a couple of things like that weren't so great on this copy have been addressed in the V2 version. Little things like the hood is a little bit wonky the way it goes on and off. It tends to be a little bit sticky. But as far as purchasing an 85mm 1.8 for doing headshots, which is what I love to do, I have no complaints whatsoever. The only time I notice the purple fringing on this lens, on both Viltrox lenses, is actually when I'm shooting video. I rarely notice it when I'm doing photos. So, and the 85 right now is $399. So $400 US for an 85 1.8. That's pretty darn good. You'd really have to have a reason to have the 1.4, like go to the GMaster, but just depends on what you're doing. But for me, this has been a great lens. This is on my A7 III all the time if I'm doing headshots, and I have absolutely no complaints about the quality of the pictures, the images that I'm getting out of it. So definitely a good choice for doing headshots. So the last lens we're going to talk about is the 70 to 180 Tamron, and this lens, I bought it because I wanted the longer reach of the 180, but I didn't want the weight of the 70 to 200. And I think if you look at most YouTube videos, you'll see guys talking about the 70 to 200 f4, or they're arguing about why you should get the f4 or get the 2.8. And a lot of those reasons are valid, but both of those cameras, those lenses are very heavy. Okay, the Tamron 70 to 180 millimeter just doesn't have the weight of those other two lenses, and so you can take this out and go on a hike with it. I can use it for headshots. I don't have to be on a tripod, although I always am when I'm shooting headshots. It has a lock on the lens, so if you're carrying it upside down, it's not going to come out. The focal range is awesome. You can get beautiful blurry backgrounds. I did a video on it not too long ago. 2.8 aperture, but it's the main reason is it's such a lightweight lens. I mean, it's just a joy to use, and that's why it's in my bag. All right, so just to recap, as you notice, I've got the Viltrox 23mm on the Sony A6000 now. So, and you can see the difference you get. I mean, it just closes in a little, gives you a little bit more of a close-up, and it works really well for me that way. So once again, the 16 to 50 is a kit lens, and for me, it's a vacation lens. That's really all that I use it for. Or if the missus wants to use the A6000, then I'll put this lens on and put it on automatic, and then she can just shoot away and just take some family candids and stuff like that. But that's pretty much all it gets used for now. The 50mm f1.8, the FE f1.8, so this can be used on my A7 III or on the Sony A6000. It's just cheap, $200, 50mm focal range. If you want to get into headshots and you want to do it cheaply and have a nice bokeh blurred background, this is a lens to get started with, really. The 16mm Sigma, if you're an APS-C shooter, just go out and get one. I mean, this is a one and done lens. It does everything exceptionally well. You won't go wrong with it, and especially for the price, yeah, just go and get one. 24mm f1.4 GMaster. It's a little bit expensive for sure, but it's worth every penny. Honestly, I have no regrets about making the purchase, and being able to go from 24 to 35 is just that's really what sold me on this lens. And yeah, just go out and get one if you can afford it. Tamron 28 to 75. Awesome bread and butter lens. I can use this for headshots. I can use it for wide shots. You know, going out hiking, stuff like that, taking some candids, or if I'm doing an engagement shoot, this will be the lens that's on my camera. It gives me nice blurred background, and I have no complaints whatsoever. And it's very lightweight. It's a perfect fit for the A7 III, so that's why it's in my bag. Just a great lens all around. Viltrox 85mm f1.8 headshot lens. This is just a headshot machine. You'll love the results that you get from it, and if you can put up with a tiny bit of purple fringing that most people won't even notice, that, and the price of the lens is super cheap. And just make sure you get the V2, because a couple of things have been addressed on the V2 version. And this lens does have a USB port where you can update the firmware on the lens, and make sure you do that if you happen to get a new copy of it for sure. And last but not least is the 70 to 180mm Tamron lens. And again, if I'm going out hiking, I want to be able to punch in a little bit, get in a lot closer to people, or not have the weight of the 70 to 200mm lens. That's why I bought this lens, and I use it fairly often now. So, you know, that's the thing. There's nothing worse than going out and buying a 70-200 lens and then you end up not using it. And that's what I found with my Sigma lens probably 10 or 15 years ago. It's great for headshots. As long as it's on a tripod, it works great. But the weight of it is a deterrent to actually using it and making it a practical choice in your bag. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Thanks for much for watching. I appreciate it if you hit the subscribe and like buttons. And that helps me, and come back and make more videos like this. And be careful with the COVID situation, because not a joke, it's getting worse here where I live. The numbers are going up, and I got another 2 weeks before I get my first shot, so I'm kind of excited about that. But still, I'm going to have to be careful, because even having the shot, you can still carry and transmit the bug. So anywho, play safe, kids, and we'll see you next time.